Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into some of the most foundational source material for ethical and spiritual development. We're talking about the long discourses, or the Digha Nikaya.
Right. And these texts, they form the very first collection of the suttas in the Pali Canon. They're essentially the blueprint.
The blueprint for a life aimed at ultimate freedom.
That's absolutely right. And when people first come to these texts, they're often looking for, well, philosophy or maybe history.
Right.
Our mission today, based on these sources, is much more practical. We're going to try and strip away some of the narrative, the stories, to get to the core, direct, actionable
The
instructions.
spiritual roadmap.
Exactly. It's a pragmatic, deep dive into the how-to of awakening.
And one of the first things that really jumps out when you review this material is the translator's intent. This wasn't meant for academics in an ivory tower.
No, not at all. The goal was explicit, we're told, to make the suttas accessible for the ordinary person with little or no understanding of Buddhism.
That accessibility piece is huge.
It's critical. And it directly informed the stylistic choices, in rendering this ancient material into modern English. They deliberately chose simpler words.
Instead of the complex, jargon-heavy stuff you sometimes see.
Exactly. Direct, active phrasing. Not that sort of oblique, passive voice you find in older translations. The whole approach is explicit, leaving very little room for you to misinterpret things.
But without sacrificing accuracy.
Right. They walked that tightrope, making sure the translation remained full, omitting nothing of substance, but still delivering that immediate clarity. It's a tough balance to strike.
And it's necessary, frankly, because the structure of the canon itself can feel a bit labyrinthine if you don't have a guide.
It can. We should probably touch on that. We're told semantic referencing is the key to navigating the Nikayas, these large collections.
So it's not like reading a book series, chapter 1, chapter 2.
Not at all. Think of it more like a library organized by theme or maybe length, but not necessarily in the order it was all composed. There's a logic to it, but it's not the linear logic we're used to.
Okay. And for our purposes, what's really key is the internal structure of the individual discourses, the suttas themselves.
Yes. And they often follow this really interesting rhetorical pattern.
The ABA pattern.
The ABA pattern. It's like a signature of the tradition. You get a central statement, let's call that A.
Okay.
Then it's followed by some kind of illustrative simile or imagery, that's B. A metaphor of a doctor or a burning building, something vivid.
Yeah, no.
Then the original statement, A, is repeated. But this time it lands with more force because of the illustration you just heard. It was an amazing memory aid in an oral tradition. It makes the core point sticky.
That makes a lot of sense. It ensures the instruction is preserved.
Perfectly.
So that sets the stage. Let's jump into the core instruction set itself, the gradual training.
Yes, this is the whole path. The comprehensive step-by-step roadmap for someone who decides to, leave the world behind.
It really is a total path. It starts from that very first moment of inspiration.
That's right. It begins with a fundamental internal recognition. The individual hears the teaching, the Dhamma, and something clicks. They realize the limitations of their current life.
And the language the texts use to describe that is, it's incredibly stark, isn't it?
It is. The phrase is that the household life is cramped and dirty, but the life of one gone forth is wide open.
Cramped and dirty. That's powerful.
It's a powerful metaphor. The household life, family, business, all stuff. It's spiritually constricting. It's cramped because you're always bumping into responsibilities and attachment.
Dirty.
Dirty because those attachments, even the good ones, are mixed with the defilements. Greed, aversion, delusion. But the renouncer's life, that's wide open. It's a space where the mind can finally stretch and breathe.
And that reflection is the pivot. It leads right into phase 1, renunciation and ethics. Sila.
And the action that follows is immediate. It's symbolic. You give up your possessions, shave your head, put on the ochre robe.
It's a commitment to moral restraint in its fullest sense.
Absolutely. Restrained in body, in speech, and crucially, in mind. And you have to adopt this radical contentment. You're satisfied with just enough food to live and just enough cloth to cover you.
That sounds like a huge sacrifice. An undoing of everything we're taught to value.
Yeah.
Why would anyone stick with it? What's the practical result?
Because the payoff is immediate. But it's internal. It's psychological. The texts say a mendicant who's accomplished in ethics sees no danger in any quarter in regards to their ethical restraint.
So because you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear.
Exactly. Not from society, not from your own conscience, not from future consequences. This self-integrity, it creates this profound internal stability. They experience a blameless happiness inside themselves.
The blameless happiness, I like that. So ethics isn't just about being a good person. It's a direct technique for producing psychological peace,
It is. And that state of internal stability, that blameless happiness, that becomes the necessary foundation for the next, much deeper stage.
which is phase 2. Deep concentration, samadhi.
Realized through meditative absorption, or shana.
And this is a really important point because the texts seem to take a very strong stance here, one that pushes back against some modern interpretations.
They do. In some contemporary schools, the jhanas are, well, they're kind of downplayed, seen as non-essential or maybe even a distraction from insight.
But that's not what these early texts say.
Not at all. They are emphatic, the absorptions are essential, they're profound, and, importantly, they are extremely difficult to attain. They represent the culmination of mental training, not some optional side quest.
So how are these states described? What makes them so essential?
Well, the first jhana is reached by being quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome qualities. You enter this state that's filled with rapture and pleasure, but it's born of seclusion, not of the senses.
So the mental chatter is gone.
It's silenced, and the mind is being fed by this profound, non-sensory joy. As you progress, you drop more and more. In the second jhana, even initial thought goes. In the third, rapture falls away, leaving this pure equanimity and happiness.
And the fourth.
By the fourth jhana, even pleasure and pain are transcended. You're left with this purified, bright, one-pointed awareness. These are not trivial states. They stabilize the mind to a degree that's almost unimaginable for most of us.
So the whole structure, enunciation, ethics, concentration, it's all built on a system of positive feedback.
That's the brilliance of the gradual training. It's designed to be self-sustaining. The texts promise that even when you're doing something really hard, like deep renunciation, each step is immediately rewarded with deepening peace and joy.
So that experience validates the path. It proves that letting go leads to greater happiness.
And that makes the next step easier to take. You're not trying to achieve deep concentration from a baseline of anxiety. You're doing it from a baseline of stable, blameless happiness.
Okay, here's what gets really interesting. Because that ethically sound, intensely concentrated mind is now primed for the breakthrough.
The development of wisdom and insight.
Let's look at the instructions for Satipai mindfulness, which is described as the engine of the entire spiritual path.
Mindfulness is the framework. It's what allows that concentrated mind to turn its attention to the nature of reality itself. The teachings give these incredibly detailed, systematic instructions on the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation.
Observing the body, feelings, mind, and principles.
Right. And the sources are clear that establishing these 4 is essential for the spiritual path to last a long time. It's the constant vigilance that stops you from backsliding.
Let's break down the practical instructions for observing the body, because it's so much more than just being aware of your body.
Oh, absolutely. The instruction is incredibly precise. You focus on an aspect of the body. The breath is the common one, or maybe your posture is knowing, I am walking, I am sitting.
And you're supposed to observe it in 3 ways.
Yes. Internally, so your own body, externally another's body, and then both internally and externally. This is to prevent self-absorption, to reinforce that this is the shared human condition.
But the real key, the thing that turns simple calming into true insight, seems to be the focus on impermanence.
Precisely. That's the critical dimension of insight, or of vipassana. It comes when the practitioner starts watching the body as liable to originate and liable to fall, and liable to both originate and vanish.
So you are directly, experientially seeing the conditioned nature of reality.
You're seeing the body not as a static thing you own, but as a continuous dynamic process of arising and passing away. That is the moment where wisdom starts to cut through delusion.
And across all 4 of these areas, body, feelings, mind, principles, the immediate goal is to clear out the biggest mental obstacles.
Yes. The whole practice is aimed at overcoming the strong forms of desire and aversion, which the texts call covetousness and displeasure.
So all the little cravings and resistances that pop up constantly.
All of them. If you can just establish simple, non-reactive awareness of this moment, those strong attachments they quiet down, and the mind becomes clear enough to go even deeper.
Which brings us to the absolute zenith of concentration, the 8 liberations.
These are the pinnacle. A highly structured series of states that systematically move the mind away from the sensory world, away from the limits of physical form.
The first few are based on form, But the later ones move into these formless dimensions. Can you walk us through those? They sound so abstract.
They are. They go beyond material perception entirely. First, you transcend all perceptions of form and you enter the dimension of infinite space. The realization is just space is infinite.
The mind is unbounded.
Totally unbounded. Then, building on that, you transcend even that and realize the dimension of infinite consciousness. The focus is just on the infinitude of awareness itself. The next leap is the dimension of nothingness. The realization is there is nothing at all. It's a subtle state beyond even infinite consciousness.
That sounds like the absolute edge of reality as we know it. What's the eighth and final liberation?
It is the cessation of perception and feeling. This state it's a temporary complete stop of all cognitive and sensory input. The mind goes silent, but the body is still alive. Only the highest masters can do this.
So the ultimate attainment is someone who is freed both ways.
Yes, freed by heart through concentration and freed by wisdom through insight. And the real test of their mastery isn't just entering these states, it's being able to enter and withdraw from any of them in any order whenever they want. They have total command over their consciousness.
Which brings us to that striking mango metaphor. It's used to explain what happens when that realized person finally dies.
It's a brilliant image. Imagine a bunch of mangoes on a stalk. If you cut the stalk, the mangoes that are attached will eventually drop.
Okay.
The physical body of the realized one is like those mangoes. It's just the remnant of past karma. But the stalk, the conduit to future rebirth, the bhavanetti that has been completely cut.
So the chain reaction that leads to more suffering is broken.
It's severed. The body runs its course, but the cause for continued existence is gone. And when the body breaks up, the texts say simply that gods and humans will see him no more.
There's no eternal soul that goes somewhere else.
No. The process of suffering just ceases. Forever. It's the ultimate undoing of identification.
Okay, so that's a huge shift. We've gone from the roadmap of practice to the fundamental reality of how the world works. This takes us to the great discourse on causation, the Mahanidana Sutta.
Yes, and this is a demanding text. The Buddha's disciple, Ananda, thought he understood it easily, and the Buddha had to gently correct him, saying, this is profound stuff.
So if we trace the chain of causality backward, from an adult perspective, old age and death require what?
They require rebirth.
And rebirth requires continued existence?
Yes, Papa, continued existence. And this is a crucial stage because it relates to the three realms where our actions, or karma, operate. The sensual realm where we are now, the luminous form realm, and the formless realm.
And the engine driving that continued existence
is grasping, upadana.
This brings us to a really key distinction the sources highlight. The difference between simple craving and this more sophisticated thing called grasping.
This is a major insight. Craving, or tanha, is that fundamental, raw urge. The thirst for sensation, for existence. It's in every living being. A child reaching for a toy, an animal seeking water.
But grasping is different.
Grasping, upadana, is sophisticated. It's intellectual. It's mostly a product of adult humans with language. It's the tenacious attachment that's built on top of that raw craving.
So what are the things we grasp at?
The texts break it down into four sophisticated categories. First, grasping at sensual pleasures, obviously. Second, grasping at specific precepts and observances, thinking that rituals alone will save you.
And the two most consequential forms.
Grasping at views, fixed ideas about the world, and grasping at theories of a self.
So the really heavy karma, the stuff that keeps the whole cycle going, is driven by these complex intellectual attachments. Especially the idea that there's a permanent I.
Absolutely. And the suttas frame this attachment to views not as some objective search for truth, but as a psychological response to our deepest anxieties, their defense mechanisms.
Let's get into those two psychological needs. They're named Paritasita and Vifandita.
Right. Paritasita is basically anxiety. It's that fear mixed with desire. The mind is confronted with impermanence, with loss, and it feels this deep anxiety. So we cling to a theory of a permanent self because the alternative is terrifying.
And Vifandita.
That's evasiveness or restless agitation. It's about how theorizing about the self becomes an avoidance strategy. Instead of directly facing the reality of not self, the mind just restlessly jumps around building these intellectual castles to hide in.
So the whole project of defining a self is just a sophisticated way to avoid suffering.
That's the conclusion, a defense mechanism.
The refutation of self-theories in the text focuses very intensely on the idea of feeling as the self. Why that one in particular?
Because feeling pleasant, painful, neutral is our most immediate, intimate experience. It's what feels most real to us. So when people look for a self, that's often where they land.
But the Buddha's refutation is devastatingly simple.
It is. He says if you view feeling as the self, you are identifying with something that is evidently impermanent, mixed with pleasure and pain, and liable to rise and fall.
So when a good feeling ends, you feel like yourself has literally been diminished.
Precisely. You've tied your I am to something totally unreliable.
Huh.
But the argument doesn't stop there. What if you try to get clever and say the self is something that doesn't experience feeling?
The critique is just as sharp.
It is. The Buddha asks, where there is nothing felt at all, would the thought I am occur there? And the implied answer is no. You can't even conceptualize your own existence without some kind of experience.
So any attempt to define a self just leads to a dead end.
A contradiction. The only way out is to stop theorizing about a self altogether.
That's profound. Shifting from metaphysical speculation to immediate psychological reality. Okay, let's move from these core truths to how they're applied in the world. How to build and maintain an ethical community.
Right, the pragmatic side of the Dhamma. The sources detail 7 principles, taught first to the Vajis, a successful state, and then applied directly to the monastic community, the Sangha.
The 7 principles for preventing decline. They sound almost like ancient rules for good governance.
They really do, and they focus heavily on tradition, respect, and community. The first rule was not to make new decrees or abolish old ones. Stick to the established norms.
That ensures stability.
And continuity. Second, they had to honor and listen to their elders, respect accumulated wisdom.
Makes sense.
Third, for mendicants, was to live in wilderness lodgings, to stay focused on practice. Fourth was to actively avoid craving for future lives, that sophisticated grasping we just talked about.
Even after you've had some success, that desire for a heavenly rebirth can still be a trap.
It's still grasping. Fifth, and this is so important for community, was to consistently treat companions with kindness, bodily, verbal, and mental kindness, in public and in private.
And the 6th.
Highly practical. Share material gains. Even the food in your alms bowl, share it without reservation.
So sharing and kindness aren't just nice ideas. They're necessary conditions for stability.
Exactly. The promise was clear. Follow these 7 principles and you can expect growth, not decline.
Okay, let's pivot now to the layperson, the householder. Specifically, the advice given to a man named Sigalaka.
Right. Sigalaka was caught up in this ritual of revering the 6 directions: east, south, west, north, below, and above.
And the Buddha uses this as a teaching moment. He redefines the whole thing.
He does. He contrasts the external ritual with the noble one's training. For the noble disciple, covering the directions means securing your fundamental relationships through practical, reciprocal duties.
But before you can do that, you have to clear the ground.
You do. First, you have to give up the 4 corrupt deeds, the absolute baseline.
Which one?
Killing, stealing, lying, and sexual misconduct. No progress is possible until those are abandoned.
And then you have to avoid the 6 drains on wealth. This is an amazing list.
It's a remarkably detailed ancient guide to, well, fiscal responsibility and self-care. The first is consuming intoxicants, and it lists 6 specific drawbacks.
Let's hear them.
Immediate loss of wealth. It promotes quarrels. It increases illness. It leads to disrepute. It can result in indecent exposure. And, critically, it results in weakened wisdom.
That's the spiritual cost. It dulls the mind.
It makes practice impossible. The second drain is roaming the streets at night. Third is frequenting festivals too much. Fourth is gambling.
Well, pretty clear.
Fifth is associating with bad friends. And the Sutta goes into detail on what makes a good friend versus a bad one. And sixth is just sheer laziness, constantly making excuses for not working.
That list covers just about every modern pitfall. So once you've avoided the drains, how does revering the directions translate into social duties?
Each direction represents a key relationship with reciprocal duties. Parents are the East. The child supports them, maintains traditions. In return, the parents guide them, train them, find them a spouse.
Teachers of the South.
The student serves them respectfully, accepts instruction. The teacher, in return, prepares the student for life and secures their reputation.
The spouse is the West. This one is crucial for household equality.
It is. The husband must treat his wife with respect, not commit adultery, hand over authority in the house, and provide gifts. In return, she manages the household well, is faithful, and does her duty skillfully.
Friends of the North.
The duties are giving kindly words, care, equality. And the text gives 4 criteria for a true friend: a helper, the same in good and bad times, a good counselor, and sympathetic.
Workers are below. This covers labor relations.
The employer provides work based on ability, fair wages, medical care, and holidays. The staff, in turn, work diligently, take only what's given, and maintain the employer's good name. It's a full social contract.
And finally, ascetics and Brahmins are the above.
The layperson supports them with loving deeds and material needs. The ascetics, in turn, guide the layperson towards good and teach them the path. The whole system shows that for a layperson, spiritual life is achieved by mastering these relationships with kindness and fairness.
And this whole pragmatic, ethical framework stands in stark contrast to some of the other practices of the time.
Right. The sources detail a firm rejection of both extreme self-torture and the caste system.
The descriptions of extreme asceticism are pretty graphic, eating animal dung, for instance. Why include that?
To make it absolutely clear that physical torture does not purify the mind, it just causes suffering. The path is the middle way, not extremes. Even when discipline was needed, the approach was nonviolent.
We see that with the divine punishment given to the mendicant Channa.
Shanna was arrogant and wouldn't listen to anyone. The punishment wasn't physical, it was simply the instruction that no other mendicant should correct him or speak to him.
Social ostracism.
A nonviolent psychological correction meant to force him to confront his own behavior. It reinforces the whole method of the training.
And on the caste system, the Buddha directly challenged the claims of Brahmanical superiority.
He did, on both ethical and biological grounds. The Brahmins claimed to be inherently holy. The Buddha just pointed out the simple reality that Brahmin women menstruate and give birth, just like everyone else. He used direct observation to dismantle the myth.
So he asserted that principle, the Dhamma, is the ultimate measure of a person.
Correct. He said principle is the best thing for people in this life and the next. Your spiritual worth comes from your conduct, not your birth. It was a radical democratization of the spiritual path.
Okay, we've covered the roadmap for practice and the ethical rules. Let's move to the meta level. How to secure the teachings for the future. This brings us to the Puhapada Sutta.
This discourse is pivotal. It gives you the pragmatic filter for all knowledge. The Buddha famously refused to answer certain big metaphysical questions.
Like whether the world is eternal, or if a realized one exists after death.
Exactly, and people often assume he didn't know the answer, but the texts show a very different, very practical reason.
He didn't answer because the questions were irrelevant to the task at hand.
That is the crucial takeaway. He taught that these topics are not beneficial or relevant to the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They're intellectual distractions. They don't lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment.
So the test for any theory is, does it help end suffering? If not, it's just pointless speculation.
It's the ultimate pragmatic filter, and that defines what is a categorical teaching. The Four Noble Truths: suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path, those are beneficial. They do lead to extinguishment. Everything else is a sidetrack.
And this pragmatic approach becomes absolutely vital for preserving the teaching after he's gone, which leads to the 4 great references given to Ananda.
This is basically a critical thinking mandate built into the tradition. It's the procedure for ensuring ongoing doctrinal purity.
So what does the community do when someone comes along with a new claim about the teaching?
They're told not to approve it or dismiss it out of hand. Instead, you have to carefully scrutinize it. You check it against 2 ultimate sources of authority.
Greg, what are they?
First, does the claim fit in the discourse? Does it align with the established texts? And second, is it exhibited in the training? Is it supported by the practical ethical path?
So the authority isn't in the person making the claim. It's in the text and the practice.
That's the system. It creates a rational, verifiable method. If the claim doesn't fit, it's rejected. If it fits both, it's accepted. This stops the teaching from just becoming the opinion of the most charismatic speaker.
And the final piece of this preservation puzzle is the instruction to recite the teachings together.
Yes, in concert. This was the final act of stabilization. The Buddha told the mendicants to gather and recite the teachings he had realized, specifically the 37 principles conducive to awakening.
The 4 kinds of mindfulness, the Eightfold Path, all of it.
All of it. And he told them to do it without disputing, comparing meaning with meaning and phrasing with phrasing.
Why so specific?
The goal was unity and consistency. By reciting the core of the path together meticulously, they ensured harmony across the entire community. It was the spiritual maintenance plan to make sure the path would last for a long time.
So what does this all mean? When you pull it all together, this blueprint from the long discourses, it's not obscure theology. It's a remarkably detailed, practical, and actionable guide.
You see that the spiritual life is this clear, gradual process. Renunciation leading to ethical stability, intense concentration built on that stability. And finally, wisdom cultivated through mindfulness.
And it all extends to the householder. Lay ethics are not secondary. You find freedom by mastering your social duties to parents, teachers, spouses, while actively rejecting all the things that drag you down.
And crucially, it's all governed by that pragmatic filter. If a teaching doesn't lead you away from entanglement and toward peace, you discard it. The whole thing is based on verifiable results, not charisma or blind faith.
To leave you with a final thought to mull over, let's go back to the power of intention. Even in a simple act like giving or dana, the texts talk about rebirths by giving, where a person gives with the specific aim of being reborn with, say, affluent humans, or even among the gods.
Right. They fix their mind on that thought, they stabilize it, and it can guide their rebirth. They attain what they wished for. But the Buddha adds this powerful caveat.
This success is only for those of ethical conduct, not for the unethical.
That is the absolute key, the most elevated intention, the highest aim. It only works if it's underpinned by ethical purity. A pure thought in an impure vessel is powerless.
That raises a pretty profound question for us, doesn't it?
It does. If even the intention behind a simple act of charity has to be so carefully managed and backed by ethics, how meticulous must the cultivation of your mind be during all of your daily, seemingly mundane activities? The answer seems to be relentlessly meticulous, something to consider as you go about your day.